So hey guys, and welcome to the next episode of the Random Watch Dude. So today I'm going to talk about something, the unanswered question which I think a lot of us watch dudes still have, which is, what is this obsession with watches? What creates this massive obsession that a lot of us have with watches? What not only starts the obsession, but what keeps us obsessed, and what is it that we're searching for when we build up these huge collections of watches, but we never seem completely happy or completely content with what we have. I've even made a video quite recently where I talked about the fact that as soon as we get to a stage where we're happy with our collection, in other words, we get to a stage where we reach that kind of watch utopia, when we've got all the watches that we've been aspiring for the last year or two or whatever it is, we've suddenly got them in the watch box, and all 6 cases in the watch box are full with that one watch that you've really yearned for and aspired for. Once you get to that point where you've got all of the watches that you want, there's a natural tendency within a lot of us, and certainly I speak for myself on this, to push the self-destruct button a little bit and say, well, this is really boring now that I've reached my utopia in watch collecting. This is really boring, so I'm going to start again. I'm going to flip a couple of these watches that I yearned for, that I still love. I'm going to flip them and I'm going to start again. I'm going to go looking for more watches to obsess over and to yearn for. So, there's a big unanswered question for me here, which is, why do we do this, and what is it about watches in particular that makes us kind of make these really strange, crazy decisions? So I've mentioned in a couple of previous videos that I think a lot of it is to do with vanity. I think a lot of us watch collectors, particularly with guys, I don't think it's so much a case with women. I think women understand watches perfectly well, and women understand that watches are nothing more than just jewellery. For a woman to wear a really nice, let's say, a really nice Seiko or a Grand Seiko or a Submariner or an Omega Seamaster, I think women who rock those watches, by the way, guys, I think they are so cool. My wife in particular, she rocks a 43mm Rolex Sea Dweller, which actually was my watch, but she's kind of taken it off me now, really, and she wears that watch. She's only small, she's only petite, but she wears this 43mm Sea Dweller, like it's just such a cool watch. And I kind of think to myself, do you know what? I wish I looked that cool when I wore that watch, but when I wear it, I just look like a knobhead, basically, that's into Rolex watches and a bit of a, maybe even a bit of a snob. And you get judged, don't you, as a guy? As a guy, you get judged by what watch you wear. And I think that comes to my point, actually, is that I have reached the conclusion that not why we obsess over watches, but I have now reached the conclusion that watches are 100% just a vanity exercise, and they are just jewellery at the end of the day. I mean, take this watch for example. So today I'm wearing my Rolex GMT Master 2. This is the left-handed crown. Try and get a bit closer for you. This is the left-handed crown, what often is referred to as the Sprite. I call it the Riddler. This is an amazing watch, guys. I absolutely love this watch, and I feel very fortunate to have it. There aren't an awful lot of these around. You may be forgiven for thinking that there are, but if you're frequenting the Facebook Rolex Watch Club group or something like that, you think that every other man and his dog had one of these. But they're very rare. They're very hard to get hold of, and you're very lucky to get one. But ultimately, guys, as much as this is a cool watch, and I love it because, I like to refer to it as a tool watch, it's not, it's just a piece of jewellery. So it got me thinking about comparisons that I could draw. What comparisons could I draw, in relation to watches and other aspects of life, where I can draw some sort of comparison with vanity? Or is it just watches? And I've come up with this theory, guys. Now I'm going to try and explain this as best I can. You may or may not agree with this. I'm just going to put a pre-warning in now. You may think that what I'm about to talk about is ludicrous. You may think that I'm completely barking up the wrong tree, and I'm just basically pulling 2 completely different things together, and 1 + 1 = 3. However, bear with me. I'm not expecting you to agree with me, but I have a theory, and I'm quite happy with this theory, and I just want to share it with you. So I'm going to kind of compare, if you'll allow me to, the obsession with watches and the fact that it's jewellery, and kind of just man jewelry. I'm going to say that that's basically a symbol. In other words, this vanity is not about us looking all blingy and wealthy. This is a kind of almost a symbol, a signature of who we are, but more importantly, how we want people to perceive us. And I was kind of thinking, there's something else in life that, particularly nowadays in life, that an awful lot of the whole human population is quite obsessed with. And I think that's quite similar to watches, and it's tattoos. So I think tattoos kind of run on quite a similar principle to our obsession with watches. Now, when I was a kid, bearing in mind, guys, I was born in the early 1970s. So when I talk about me being a kid, I'm kind of talking about the 70s and 80s, really. And I'm talking about a young kid. Tattoos were a very, very rare commodity. In fact, they were so rare that the only people that you actually saw with tattoos were ex-Navy people. Very, very common to see ex-Navy guys with tattoos, usually on their forearm here, so on display. And those tattoos would normally be with this really, really thick green dye, and because they had the tattoo done many, many years ago, that dye had slowly spread out, and actually, by the time these guys were in their 40s and 50s, the tattoos had kind of just blurred into this big blob on their forearm, and quite often it would be something quite literally as tacky as an anchor. Or something that's naval related. So you could always tell if a guy had a tattoo on his forearm, it was probably naval. Alternatively, if it was somebody that had a tattoo maybe on their hand, it was quite common for people to have a swallow, the bird, a swallow tattooed on their hand. I used to quite often see people that had swallows tattooed on their hand, and apparently I later found out that was a sign that somebody had done bird, been to jail. And that was kind of your badge of honour if you'd spent some time in jail, done bird, as they called it, that you had a swallow tattooed on your hand. And so tattoos weren't really necessarily commonplace, and they certainly weren't anything to do with vanity, and they were very, very kind of niche almost, I'd say. And like I said earlier, they were quite often just green blurry blobs, by the time these guys were into their 40s and 50s. And then as I got a bit older, once I got into my teens and early 20s, so now we're talking about the 90s now, the 1990s, I started to, I was really into heavy metal rock music. Actually, I listened to Pink Floyd mostly throughout my 20s. I listened to Pink Floyd in this big sort of smoky haze of not really knowing what's going on around me, like a lot of us did, I think, back in the 80s and 90s. But around that time, because I was quite into heavy metal as well, I knew a lot of people that had great big tattoos all the way down their forearm. Their entire forearm right up to their shoulder would just be what they call a sleeve. Just the entire area of skin would be tattooed from the wrist right up to the top of the arm. And I just thought, wow, that's crazy cool. But it was very much a heavy metal related kind of thing. You didn't, random people didn't just go and get these huge tattoos all the way down their arm, from their forearm down to their wrist. These were typically people that specifically were interested in heavy metal music. Iron Maiden and the Motley Crue, and not so much Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd was far too chilled for sleeve tattoos, but certainly big bands, the Ozzy Osbourne bands of the era, Black Sabbath, and Ozzy Osbourne himself, and Van Halen. That was if you were into that kind of music, Megadeth, Metallica. Oh, it's all coming back to me now, guys. These guys that were crazy into this type of music, and I was, but I wasn't obsessed with it. They would quite often get these tattoos, and of course that was a sign, a bit like the guy that had been in the Navy and had the anchor tattooed on his hand, and the guy that had done bird and he had a swallow on his wrist. If you were really into heavy metal, your badge of honour and your signature to tell the world that this is you and this is your lifestyle and this is what you're into, was to have this tattoo. So we're fast forward now into the 2000s, into the noughties, as it were. And of course, then you had people like, more mainstream, I suppose you could say, like David Beckham, for example, suddenly started to get lots of tattoos. And that was quite unusual, because at that time, people like David Beckham didn't have tattoos. If they had a tattoo, it might be one, that had the name of their wife or their girlfriend in it. on it, you know, Posh Spice. I would have forgiven him if he got Posh Spice tattooed on his shoulder blade or something like that. But people like David Beckham started to get tattoos, and all of a sudden tattoos started to become really cool, didn't they? And it was around the 2000s, going into sort of 2010s. So they'd gone from being niche to being quite mainstream. And I've just kind of reached this conclusion, guys, that tattoos have now become very much a symbol and a signature of who you are. You know, this is you trying to tell a story to other people of who you are. Because if you just wanted to tattoo for yourself, you just wouldn't have a tattoo in the first place, would you? You know, tattoos, particularly on your arms and your, heaven forbid, you know, your face or your neck or your legs or your calves. You know, these are parts of your body that are frequently exposed, you know, to the outside world, to everybody else. So there's no sensible reason to have a tattoo for yourself. The sensible reason to have a tattoo is to display it to other people. And of course, this theory of displaying artwork on your body to other people goes back thousands of years. Of course, I mean, even here in New Zealand, you know, the indigenous Maori people of New Zealand are heavily into tattoos, as are most of the Pacific Islands. You know, they're heavily into tattoos on the face and on the arms as a display to other people, typically with the men, and to a degree the women as well. It's a demonstration of strength. It's a symbol of strength and power, and you're displaying that, of course, you know, to strangers, to people that might be a threat to you. You know, you're warning them off with your facial tattoos. And that's kind of where it all stems from, really. It's not necessarily with them decoration. It's more of it is decoration for them, but it's not jewellery, it's a thread. So tattoos absolutely, you know, throughout millennia have been used as kind of a way to tell a story about who you are, and to warn other people potentially as well about who you are, to stay away. And I'm kind of thinking, guys, I'm linking these two things now. I'm linking tattoos, particularly the modern day obsession with tattoos, where basically, you know, guys, I think you look at the Premier League football, for example. Now, if you watch a Premier League football match, you know, pretty much the vast majority of those players, and we're talking young guys in their 20s now, aren't we? They're just covered in tattoos, aren't they? You know, and you can't make out a lot of it. And of course, if you ask them, they'll tell you that, oh, this is personal to me. You know, this is about me, and you know, this is my family, and this represents this, and this represents that. But ultimately, you know, you're doing it because you want other people to see it. So I think there's a very, very strong link between the watch obsession, my watch obsession, and having tattoos. So the great thing, if you'll forgive me on this, the great thing about, and sorry to you guys that have tattoos, the great thing about watches is it's kind of a removable tattoo, isn't it? You know, we buy watches. I think we buy watches mainly because we want that watch to tell a good story about us. We want to imagine that watch on our wrist, and it makes you feel cool. It's a bit of jewellery, but you're also sending a message, aren't you, to the receiver? You know, I'm sending a message to the receiver about this Rolex. I mean, they might receive that message as what a wanker, but at the end of the day, however they receive it, that's how they receive it. But how I'm intending to sell it is what's important. And I think tattoos are the same. So watches, guys, here's my statement on this. Watches are a tattoo for people who can change their story. So in some respects, watches are considerably more advantageous than tattoos. But in principle, I think they perform the same function. So guys, I've got a tattoo. I got a tattoo done when I was, I think I was 20 actually. I was, like I said earlier, I was heavily into Pink Floyd. Pretty much spent my late teens and early 20s in this, you know, smoky haze in cold rooms, you know, listening to Pink Floyd with my friends, yeah, we had posters of Pink Floyd, you know, all around the walls in our rooms and what have you. And I ended up getting a tattoo, which is related. I'll put a picture of it up here, and yeah, look, it was a tattoo. It's on my back shoulder blade, tattoo that tells a story of a time. Actually, it tells a story of a time in my life when, you know, obviously I was single, when I was into different things. I just wanted to drink beer and smoke joints, and you know, we've all been through that, I think, at some point in our lives, haven't we? So I got that tattoo done because it was almost like representative of that time, and also the music I was listening to at the time. So I wasn't necessarily doing it to send a message because it was on my shoulder blade. It's only really visible when I take my shirt off, which I don't do very frequently in public, as you can imagine. But it certainly was there as a it's almost a vanity statement as well, isn't it? So, so I think also just with regards to the comparison between tattoos and watches, I think again where the obsession with watches sort of trips over into potentially being not harmful, but it certainly doesn't help you in other parts of your life if you're spending all this incredible amount of time thinking and obsessing over watches. I think also with tattoos, they're also a sign of excess, especially these people these days that have got tattoos all over their body, all over their arms, all over their face and neck and everything. I think there's potentially a sign of excess vanity. When you have an excessive amount of tattoos, excess vanity. And I think that's the same with watches. If you've got too many watches in your collection and they're making you anxious, it's also a sign of excess vanity. It's also a sign, I think, too many tattoos, too many watches. It's a sign of you wanting more attention, unnecessarily large amounts of attention, to be flipping through all these watches and to be having all these tattoos done. That's kind of a similarity, I think, of potentially, wanting more attention than is necessary or than is natural. And of course there's a flip side to this, there's a negative side to this, which is, some people I think, and it's the same with piercings and tattoos, are also a sign of lack of self-esteem, low self-esteem, and potentially even self-loathing. And I think, to a degree, I think watches could fall into potentially that category as well. Not with everybody, I'm not saying it happens to you, I'm not even saying it happens to me, but I'm saying when you've got an obsessive tendency to just keep acquiring more and more and more, and it's the same with tattoos and piercings, that message that you want to convey to people is when it becomes obsessive and excessive. I think it's also potentially a sign of a lack of self-esteem and self-loathing, and I think that applies to watches as well with some people. So lots of deep messages there, guys, in relation to tattoos and watches. So my question for you guys, and I'm going to finish this video with a question, is if you were to have one signature tattoo, what would it be? And what is, because I know you guys all know this, what is your signature watch? So in other words, if you were only allowed to have one watch and that was a message, that watch had to convey the message about who you want people to receive you as a person, what would that watch be and what would that tattoo be? So I've shown you the tattoo, that's my signature tattoo. This, by the way, guys, this is why I'm wearing this watch today for this video, this is my signature watch. Now it's a Rolex, so people are probably going to receive this as what a wanker. I get that, but that's okay, because I love this watch, and so I love it, and therefore it's my signature watch. Let me know what you think, guys. Signature tattoo, signature watch. Am I barking up the wrong tree? Have I completely misunderstood this psychology of tattoos and watch collecting? Are they related, are they not? Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. Cheers.